Hi folks, welcome to the Prepared Homestead. This is Travis. Thank you all for stopping by to watch. A little bit of a cool morning. Hopefully we can get this done without getting rained on. We're kind of in between rain showers. And well, if we get wet, we get wet, you know. Don't let the weather slow you down on getting out, and whether it's training, exercise, getting in shape, checking out your gear, because if you're only doing it when the weather's nice and wonderful, you're not really learning and conditioning yourself, because old Murphy's Law says that if you ever actually have to get out and do it in real life, weather's probably not going to be in very good condition. So don't let the weather stop you. It's possible, maybe, could be, that we are watching a narrative change when it comes to Ukraine, Russia, China, Taiwan, basically global war. I mean, remember, that's what Kamala Harris said, that we are in a global war. So I guess, Joe Biden says she's the president all the time, so she's declared it. Now I want to make clear that I'm not, in all this that I'm saying, I'm not saying that I believe that we're on the verge of pulling out of Europe and Ukraine and just letting Russia have it. But I think that there's something going on. Came out in the news in the last day or so from a German news source that their German investigation, is that the Nord Stream pipelines were blown up by some pro-Ukrainian faction. Well, I mean, that's not necessarily wrong. I mean, the Biden administration and the CIA and stuff, they're pretty pro-Ukrainian. At least that's what they say. So that may not be necessarily wrong, but they're indicating that it was a group of people, 5 or 6 people, inside Ukraine, that apparently chartered a private yacht and went out there in the water and dove down and blew up the pipeline. Zelensky has completely said absolutely not. We were not involved. This was not done by us. So he's already on the defense. And there's more and more coming out about it, apparently. At least that's what they say, that they have more information. I guess in January of this year, months after the Nord Stream pipeline explosion happened, Germany says that they boarded the ship that they believe did this, or transported the people that did this, and they investigated the ship and did all their crime scene kind of work months after it happened. This is kind of interesting because, of course, just before the big Ohio train derailment there in East Palestine, it came out that an investigative journalists, that the United States was the one that was involved in Nord Stream pipeline explosion, which that's a big deal. I think a lot of people already kind of suspected that, because when you really get into what was done and how it was done, there's really not too many people out there that could probably pull this off. It would take a pretty, I would guess, large intelligence network and some very technical skills to pull this off. This was a pipeline at about 1,000 feet depth, and believed to use about 1,000 pounds of explosives to blow up these pipelines. So, how many deep dive teams that's capable of dealing with that level of explosives? I'm not aware of any in Ukraine. I don't know of any submarines or any craft that they can, take divers down that depth, but I don't know. Maybe they'd have it. To me, it just has the smell of United States all over it, because, of course, who was the one that benefit? Cui bono. That's usually one of the things that I think of when you hear about this kind of stuff, any kind of thing in the news, well, who's benefiting from this? Really, who benefits? And that kind of points you to usually a pretty good direction. And of course, the ones that's going to benefit the most would be, it'd be the United States from the Nord Stream pipeline. They didn't want Germany to become dependent upon Russia. So there's that going on. And that's actually pretty big news. And it's not news that whether it's true or not, it's news to see how things are shifting. That, there's evidence that these Ukrainian forces, pro-Ukrainian group, was the one that actually took out the pipeline. Russia has stated that none of their evidence points to Ukrainian group factions that did this. So they're saying that that's bunk. Also, the German defense minister, I believe, that's who it was, yesterday said that it's almost like he kind of spilled the beans. He said that they will be seeing that the United States will start shifting their focus away from Ukraine and more towards Taiwan. Now, I don't believe, and I could be wrong, I don't believe that this means that the United States is going to abandon Ukraine, pull out, stop funding it, and just let the, Russians have it. I mean, that's possible. It's possible that, they're going to throw Zelensky under the bus at some point. I mean, look at what we've done in virtually every other nation that we've gone in. We have kind of a history of this, that we go in and do our thing, try to, establish ourselves, and then, at some point we just walk away from it. Especially with Biden administration. I mean, look at what they did in Afghanistan. So it's possible that we do that, but my gut's telling me that that's not necessarily the case. It's just that we're shifting focus to Taiwan. And I have noticed over the last week or so that there does seem to be in the news a shift of focus. Just 2 or 3 weeks ago, I believe it was when Kamala went overseas into Europe. Around that time, we were still seeing a lot of talk from her and other government officials, NATO officials, that, Ukraine has to win. That there is no option, that Ukraine must be victorious in this. And then, since then, there's been all this, well, they need to kind of come up with a ceasefire and peace agreement. We need to, China stepped in and they kind of had their little peace thing that, of course, no one really wants to pay attention to. But it's almost been a softening of the message. And in the news over the last few days, while there's still stuff coming out in the news about Ukraine and Russia and, troop movements and things like that, from at least my perspective, what I can find, there's more stuff in the news about Taiwan, stuff going on in Southeast Asia, North Korea. Ooh, that water's cold. Splashed it all up into my boot. That's nice. Troop movements, build up, threats, little war games that they're playing, drills that they're doing with Taiwan and South Korea. There's been a lot of that kind of talk in the news, more so than the Ukraine side, at least from my perspective. So I think it's possible that, like the German defense minister said, that we're going to see America's focus shift. Possibly part of it is because it appears, and I've seen a lot of people online make this comment, that all of the pro-Ukraine Americans, for the last year, waving their flags and all that kind of stuff, has kind of died down. I think Americans have lost interest in Ukraine. It's not as cool anymore. We got to move on to something else because our short attention span, it has to be that way. And so possibly we're going to start seeing things shift to Taiwan. Now, this one could be very different if that's the case. if things kind of follow a similar pattern than what we've seen with Ukraine, we have to understand it's different. Ukraine was and still is, and Russia acknowledges that Ukraine, or at least parts of Ukraine, is a sovereign nation. There's not been any real doubts about that. Taiwan is different. Taiwan is one of those little gray areas. We treat it like it's a sovereign nation. Most people think of it as a sovereign nation, but even our own government since the 70s has on paper agreed to a one China policy, which is that Taiwan is part of China. It's just a territory, a Chinese state, and that it belongs to China. And so that's a little different there. Do they even have to declare war? I don't know. Can they just go in and say, hey, this is our country. You know, this is our island. We can just go in and do what we want. A lot of talk that Taiwan military capability is better than Ukraine's. I don't know. It's a small island. I understand they have some good equipment that we've given them and sold them. But I think right now China's big advantage is just the overwhelming firepower that they could unleash. Most likely, though, they're just going to blockade the island, cut it off. From everything that I've read, that Taiwan is not very self-sustaining. That Taiwan couldn't hardly last more than a week without some type of supplies coming in, whether it be fuel or otherwise. That's probably the most likely scenario, and puts us in a predicament. We've already pledged, of course, that we will take care of Taiwan. You know, our government, the Biden administration, the Defense Department, that we will be there for Taiwan. And China has made it quite clear that you are messing with fire. So, are we going to see this shift? I don't know. But it does appear that things have kind of changed a little bit. That the opinions of the people, American people, have kind of changed a little bit, not a lot, on Ukraine. And I'm not making any claims that I think this is all going to happen over the next few days or even the next couple weeks or something. But it's quite possible that we could start seeing things shift. Focus from Ukraine to Taiwan, and then also South Korea. And this is a dangerous, I think this is dangerous, more dangerous. And the reason is, and don't for 1 minute think that I'm some kind of Putin supporter or anything like that. But if I were to line up the people that I thought were reasonable when it came to enemies of the United States or people that oppose the United States, I would think that Putin's probably at the top of that list of being at least the most reasonable person. I don't think that China is nearly, they're methodical. They plan things out years and decades in advance. But I don't think they're nearly as reasonable. I don't think that they would have the control and be as humane as Putin has been. And I know a lot of you may say, Putin's not been humane. Actually, if you look at it, he has. For the most part, Russia has gone kind of over and above, making sure that what they do in Ukraine is only against the military, and for the most part. I mean, there's always exceptions. And then, of course, North Korea, I mean, I don't know that they would even care. They just unleash their fury. So I think we would be dealing with a very different situation. You also have to factor in that I don't think that Russia and Putin has any aspirations of world domination. Putin seems to very much be a nationalist. And he just wants old Imperial Russia back. I mean, to put it very simple, that's pretty much what he's doing. Bring Imperial Russia back, all their territories, and then leave us alone. China, on the other hand, has been very open about world domination, at least on the economic front. They want to be the dominating economy on this planet. They want to be leading the new world order. And so it's a very different thing. I think a war focused in China would be way, way bigger of a deal than a war focused in Russia. And then if we're doing it on two fronts, even if we're just still doing a proxy war with Ukraine and doing a full front war with Taiwan, because here's the thing, at least in Ukraine, you got NATO. I understand that NATO is 90% of the United States, but you have all these other countries supplying Ukraine. Not nearly as much as the United States, but still. In Taiwan, there's not really anyone else. I mean, maybe Japan, but they don't really have anything. They've pretty much been pacifists since World War II. And I'm not so sure that Australia would do a whole lot. So there's not a whole lot over there in the South Asia to support Taiwan other than us. So it would be pretty much directly us with China. And I think that this could be a very devastating thing. You factor that in with all the other stuff going on. This whole digital currency stuff, I think it's getting pretty close. I think it's very possible with the raising of the interest rates and stuff. It's funny, I talked about that a couple of days ago, and then right after that, interest rates were, being talked about being raised and the stock market's going down and all that kind of stuff. The numbers out there right now are actually in most things that you look at numbers on when it comes to economic stuff are about as bad, if not worse, than prior to the 2008 crash. So I think we're on the verge of that. There's been more and more talk of like bank failures and possible little bank runs here and there. You factor all that stuff into the war because it's all connected, folks. Trust me, very much connected. And so the possibility of us seeing an increased amount of conflict and diversion and refocusing in a different area when it comes to Taiwan and China, I think is a very real thing. So it's something that we need to be preparing for. We also have to realize that we get a whole lot more. We trade-wise are connected way, way more with China than Russia. You guys know that. And so sanctioning China is going to be a lot harder because they can sanction us and it's going to hurt worse than if it was Russia. So there's a lot of stuff going on, and I don't think it's going to get any better anytime too soon. And we should just be on our toes and watching for it. This is just more confirmation that we should be preparing in a fury, really. Just preparing as hard as we can in all ways, physically, mentally, and spiritually. It's time to get your houses in order, folks. Because this house of cards can't last forever. Thank you all for watching. Catch you in the next video.